My name is Lena Hartmann, and on the night my father celebrated his retirement, I walked back into the building he once used to define me and erase me. The school auditorium was glowing under strings of warm lights filled with teachers, parents, alumni, people who had heard only one version of my story, his version. Robert Hartman stood center stage accepting applause with the polished smile he'd worn my entire childhood. "Tyler has always been the child I'm most proud of," he set his arm around my younger brother. "My daughter? Well, she chose a different path." Laughter rippled through the crowd. Not cruel laughter, just the kind born from a lie told so often it becomes comfortable. I stepped through the side doors quietly, the hinges making a soft groan that cut through the noise for just a second. I felt hundreds of eyes turn toward me. The girl who vanished at 18, the fable whispered in hallways, the cautionary tale parents used on their kids. I wasn't supposed to be here. At least that's what he believed. My heels clicked against the polished floor as I walked toward the stage past rows of people who had been taught to pity me. I carried no gift, no smile, only a folded letter I had memorized line by line. The letter he hid in the attic for 10 years. My father's expression shifted when he recognized me. First confusion, then discomfort, then something sharper fear dressed as irritation. "Lena," he said through a stiff smile, "this is unexpected." I stopped at the foot of the stage and held the letter up where only he could see it. "Don't worry," I said softly. "I'm just here to share the part of the story you forgot to tell them." The entire room went still, and for the first time he wasn't the one controlling the narrative. Most people assume that having a school principal for a father means discipline and structure. For me, it meant perfection or silence. My father built his reputation on being the man who shaped futures, and everything in our home existed to protect that image. My mother, Cynthia, was the quiet architect behind it all, smoothing edges and maintaining the illusion of a model family. From early on, I learned which versions of myself were allowed. When I won awards, my father claimed credit for raising a focused child. When I failed or even hesitated, he retreated into days of icy quiet, a punishment worse than shouting. The house shrank during those periods, like the walls leaned in to remind me who held power. Tyler. My younger brother lived by different rules. He laughed too loudly, broke curfews, skipped assignments. Yet he was always spirited, creative, the future leader of the family. My father looked at him with softness. I never saw directed at me. I used to wonder what it felt like to be seen with pride instead of expectation. Music was the only space where I could breathe. I played piano at night, letting the notes fill the gaps his silence left behind. But even that wasn't safe. "It's a hobby," he'd say, patting my shoulder as if humoring a child. Real achievements happen in classrooms, not practice rooms. As I got older, I measured every step around him. Praise was brief, disapproval sharp. My mother backed him in everything later, whispering, "You know how your father gets. Just don't stir anything up." But something changed during my final year of high school. I began imagining a life not built around his spotlight. A life where choosing something for myself didn't feel like betrayal. It was the first time I questioned the script he'd written for me. One night after a scholarship audition, I sat alone replaying the music in my mind. I felt proud, not because he approved, but because he didn't even know. The pride was mine, and that was when everything began to shift. The moment he sensed I was slipping out from under his control. The breaking point came the week I turned 18. I had auditioned for a prestigious arts conservatory, a program I never told my father about because I already knew his answer. When the acceptance letter arrived, I hid it under my mattress like a forbidden treasure. For the first time, I had something entirely mine. But secrets don't survive long in a house built on surveillance. One afternoon, I came home to find my father at the kitchen table, the letter unfolded in front of him. My mother hovered behind him, wringing her hands like she wasn't the one who'd given it to him. He didn't yell, he looked offended. "An arts program," he said, as if the words were an insult. "After everything we've invested in you, this is what you choose." I tried to explain it wasn't a rejection of them, just an opportunity, something that lit a part of me they'd spent years dimming. But he cut me off with that controlled voice I'd grown up fearing. "If you walk out that door to chase this foolishness, don't expect to walk back in." It wasn't a threat, it was a decision he'd already made. That night I wrote a short, shaky letter. "I love you. I need space to think. I'll be back Sunday." I slipped it under his office door and left for a friend's place, believing a few days might cool everything down. When I returned Sunday, my luggage was stacked on the porch. The locks had been changed. My childhood home, my memories, my identity was closed to me. A yellow sticky note fluttered in the breeze. You made your decision. Good luck. A neighbor watched from her window, sympathy shifting quickly to caution. My father was the principal. Whatever story he told would become the truth. Standing on the steps, rain soaking through my clothes, I understood something with piercing clarity. I hadn't left home. I had been erased from it, and it was only the beginning. The first weeks on my own felt like free fall. Not the exhilarating kind, just a drop with nothing to hold on to. I stayed at my friend Mila's place, sleeping on her couch between textbooks and half-empty coffee cups. I worked late shifts at a diner wiping tables, while my hands shook from exhaustion, pretending not to hear customers whisper when they recognized me as the principal's troubled daughter. My father's version of the story spread fast. Teachers who once praised me now walked past without a glance. Some whispered, "She ran off with a guy. She had issues. Shame she had potential." Every lie tightened around my throat until breathing felt like swallowing water. My mother never called. Tyler posted vague messages about family betrayal and choosing stability over chaos. From afar, I watched my existence turned into a cautionary tale I never agreed to. But beneath all of it, something in me refused to break. I enrolled in community college, quietly using savings from old tutoring jobs. I wrote late into the night scenes, monologues, fragments of dialogue too sharp to say aloud. It was the one place where my voice couldn't be manipulated. One evening after a shift that left my feet numb, I opened my notebook and found a line I didn't remember writing. "They can steal your story, but they can't hold the pen forever." I stared at it for a long time. Maybe that was the moment everything shifted from surviving to rebuilding. I submitted a short play to a local theater competition under a pseudonym. I expected nothing. Instead, I received an email, selected for showcase. On opening night, I sat in the back row, hidden in the shadows, watching actors speak words shaped by a pain no one knew was mine. The applause felt unreal soft but grounding, like someone saying, "You're still here." That small spark grew into opportunity. A bigger playhouse reached out, then a production contract. Slowly, my life stopped orbiting the story he'd written for me. But the past always finds its way back. One day, a message arrived, a photo of a weathered envelope and a single line. "Lena, I found something in the attic." Aunt Rose had never been a steady presence. She appeared for holidays, brought polite gifts, and slipped out before anyone could ask real questions. I didn't blame her. Living near my parents required silence, and she'd mastered it long before I was born. So when she messaged me, "Can we talk?" I felt dread, not hope. We met at a small cafe between our towns. She looked different, tired, shaken. Without speaking, she pulled a faded envelope from her bag. My handwriting, small and naive, looked back at me. "I found it in the attic," she said, in a box labeled "Old Tax Documents. It doesn't match anything your father told us." My chest tightened as I opened it. My heart recognized the words before my eyes did the letter I wrote the night I left at 18. Creased, yellowed, untouched. "I love you. I need space to think. I'll be back Sunday." Not running away. Not unstable, not dramatic, just a girl asking for time. Rose watched me, guilt etched into her face. "Lena, he told everyone you ran off, that you refused to come home. He made it sound like you chose chaos over family. We believed him. I believed him." I forced a breath. "He didn't let me go. He locked me out." Rose shook her head, covering her mouth. "Your mother said you left without warning. That they tried everything." Her voice cracked. "I defended them. For years." Silence settled heavy, overdue. The truth had been sitting in a dusty attic while I rebuilt myself from the ruins of a lie. Rose leaned in. "He retires next month. Big celebration. The whole community will be there." I stared at the letter, at the version of me frozen in ink. She lowered her voice. "Lena, people deserve to know what really happened. Not for revenge, just for truth." But it wasn't just truth. It was identity. 10 years of erasure, lie by lie, until I no longer recognized the story the world told about me. I folded the letter and slipped it into my bag, its weight settling like a promise. "I'll be there," I said. Rose exhaled relief, trembling through her. "Are you sure you're ready?" Ready. I had been waiting 10 years, and the night of his retirement party would rewrite everything. The night of the retirement gala felt strangely theatrical, as if I was walking into a production my father had been directing for decades. The school auditorium was dressed like a ballroom, gold banners, soft amber lights, a slideshow playing memories that weren't entirely true. Pictures of him shaking hands, mentoring students, smiling with my mother on holidays. Not a single frame of me. Tyler stood near the stage, soaking in praise from former teachers who adored him. Cynthia circled the room, greeting people with the kind of warmth she reserved for events where her husband needed a perfect supporting cast. Then came Robert. He stepped onto the stage to a round of applause that rattled the walls. He held the microphone like it belonged to him, like the entire narrative of this community had always been in his hands. "I've dedicated my life to this school," he began. "To shaping young minds. To guiding my children." He gestured to Tyler. "At least the one who stayed." Laughter rippled across the room. Familiar laughter. The kind that once suffocated me. Tyler smiled on cue. My mother dabbed her eye like the proud wife of a great man. That was my cue. I stepped through the side aisle, the noise fading into a hush as people noticed me. A few gasped quietly. A few whispered my name. But most stared as if I were a ghost, an unwelcome reminder of a chapter everyone agreed to pretend never existed. Robert froze. Stage lights burned hot, but his face drained of color all at once. "Lena," he said, voice tight. "This is a surprise." "Not really," I replied. I walked to the foot of the stage, slid the old envelope from my bag, and held it where he could see it. The same envelope he hid in a dusty attic for a decade. He looked like he'd been punched. "What are you doing?" my mother hissed, stepping toward me. I ignored her and turned to the crowd. "Some of you know me. Most of you know the story he told about me." A murmur spread. No one interrupted. "He said I ran away, that I abandoned my family, that I was unstable." I unfolded the letter slowly, letting the paper crackle through the microphone I gently pulled from its stand. But here's what I actually wrote. Silence. Pure. Dense. I read the letter word for word. "I love you. I need space to think. I'll be back Sunday." Each line carved deeper into the room. Each pause felt like a blade being unsheathed. People who had whispered about me now stared at Robert like they were seeing a new man entirely. My father stepped forward. "Lena, that letter?" "Was in your attic," I said. "In a box labeled tax documents. Hidden and untouched." "Why?" Tyler shifted uneasily. Cynthia's composure cracked. But Robert's mask, the one he'd worn flawlessly for years, shattered. "I did what I had to do," he said quietly. The crowd recoiled, and that was the moment the power he clung to finally slipped from his grasp. The auditorium didn't erupt into chaos the way I once imagined it would. Instead, the silence thickened, settling over the room like dust after a collapse. People who had known my father for 20-30 years stared at him as if seeing a stranger wearing his face. Others looked at me with something closer to shame for believing a lie that had been convenient. Cynthia stepped onto the stage, her voice trembling. "Robert, tell them it's not what it looks like." But he couldn't. His authority had evaporated the moment the truth came out of my mouth. He looked smaller somehow, shoulders slumped, eyes darting anywhere but toward me. Tyler stood frozen, confusion and humiliation twisting across his features. "Dad, did you really? Did you lie about everything?" His voice cracked, and for a second he looked like a child again, not the golden boy who'd spent years living in the shelter of my father's illusion. My father didn't answer. That silence, his favorite weapon, was finally turned against him. Teachers who had defended him stepped back. Board members exchanged looks. Someone whispered, "This is bad. Really bad." It wasn't just a family scandal now. It was a public fracture in the reputation he'd built brick by brick. I felt none of the triumph I thought I would. No rush. No victory high. What settled inside me instead was clarity. A calm, steady realization that I no longer lived inside the world he created. I put the microphone back on its stand. "I didn't come here to destroy your night," I said. "I came because I'm done letting you own my story." Cynthia covered her mouth, tears streaming. But even now she cried more for the collapse of their image than for what I'd endured. Robert finally spoke, voice barely audible. "You should have stayed." I met his eyes. I did stay, for 18 years. That was enough. I stepped down from the stage, the crowd parting instinctively. A few people murmured apologies as I passed. Others looked away. No one stopped me. Outside, the air was crisp, carrying the faint hum of distant traffic. The night sky stretched wide above me, bigger than any moment I'd lived under his roof. I walked across the empty parking lot, the letter tucked safely against my chest. For the first time in a decade, I didn't feel like I was running from anything. I wasn't the girl they exiled. I wasn't the rumor they sculpted. I wasn't the absence they weaponized. I was Lena Hartmann, whole, unhidden, unbroken. When I reached my car, I looked back at the glowing windows of the auditorium. The applause had stopped. The music had stopped. The performance had stopped. But my life, my real life, was finally beginning. And some truths once spoken aloud don't just set you free. They build you a new place to stand.